Good morning, friends. Again, I am incredibly blown away by what folks have done for us in the last couple of days. We have had so many subscribers and people watching our videos, and I am eternally grateful for that. So, particularly for those of you who have subscribed, I cannot be any more grateful. So, thank you so much for doing that. Now, those of you who have not been able to click that button to subscribe, I'm just grateful that you're here. And I hope someday you'll be able to just click on that button and join our team. So today I'm just going to spend the next 10 minutes talking about a big topic that we can't discuss today in its entirety. So I'll just highlight a couple of what I call poisons when it comes to matters love in the Kenyan-American community. And this is coming from the perspective of a person who is preparing to return to Kenya. So I'm using the term Kenyan-American to refer to folks who were born and raised in Kenya and moved to America or diaspora as adults. And so this is a very specific group and not other groups of Kenyan-Americans. And this will also include those who are citizens and those who are not. Just remember, it specifically refers to those who were born and raised in Kenya. And what I'm going to say is really limited to my very limited experiences. So I'm talking about things that happen in my circles. And so what that means is that this information is very limited, does not apply broadly. It is possible that your experience is going to be very different than mine. So please take this with a grain of salt. Also, much of what I'm going to say is really specific to folks in heterosexual relationships, because really that's all I know within the Kenyan American community. Now, another big caveat that I have to add before I speak further is that I am not a scholar on this topic. So the information I'm sharing does not come from anything I've read. I'm just simply sharing my observation within my small circle. So what that also means is that I accept no responsibility for what you do with this information. So again, please don't use this information to stereotype any Kenyan American that you are going to run into. Now, that said, I have lived in many places in the US, but mostly both in predominantly white and diverse neighborhoods. And so I'm going to talk about 3 specific poisons within the man's community and the women's community. Like I said earlier, there is so much we can share about this topic, but 10 minutes is not a lot of time. So let's get straight on to the men's side. Again, when it comes to Kenyan Americans or Kenyans living in America, there are about 2 different scenarios when it comes to love relationships. That is, relationship between a Kenyan and a non-African. And then there are relationship between the Kenyan men and African women or Kenyan women. And these 2 scenarios can often be really different. So when it comes to dating life between Kenyan men in diaspora and non-African women, there are lots of good things that happen, but also there are lots of challenges that I have observed. The main one that I see cutting across the men within my small circle is cultural adjustment, especially around expectations, nonverbal cues, communication, and things like that, because we are all a product of some kind of an environment. And so where we grow up, we get to learn what to expect, how to communicate, how to read nonverbal cues, and things like that. And so in my own personal experience, when I moved to a very small town, very white, rural America, I really had major issues around interpreting expectations from women or communicating my expectations. And one of the most difficult parts was about the nonverbal cues. And I'll give you an example. One, I was born and raised in the village, as I've mentioned in my other videos. Now, as a village man, if I liked a girl, one of the many things I could do to communicate that would be simply to greet her and massage her palm in such a way to let her know that the Lord Himself has specifically dispatched me to increase her level of happiness. And all village girls knew exactly what that meant. Now, I came to realize that even in Kenya, city girls, many of them really could not interpret some of those nonverbal cues. And so when I moved to America, I would see that in myself, in my peers, that there was lots of nonverbal cues that we would pass along that really would not fly. And so we'd often end up with two scenarios. The first is that whenever we communicated, or whenever I see my friends communicate, their nakala chafu would not land correctly. And nakala chafu here, for those of you who don't speak Italian, is a scientific term that is used to describe very specific words that are designed to alter the rhythm of a human heart. And so whenever we use nakala chafu, things would not land correctly. The second scenario is that there would be many cases where we would communicate stuff and the girls would not get it, and vice versa. The girls would communicate and we would miss it. And so after multiple events, then you end up looking more like what we would call in Greek, we'd call omondi longlailo. And omondi longlailo is a very specific term that is used to describe men who have deficit in matters organic chemistry. Now, for Kenyan men dating African women or Kenyan women, one common experience that I noticed is that even when the woman checks all the boxes, the major issue for us was always whether our timelines intersected. In many cases, the girls were ready to be serious, many of us were not. And so that conflict in timelines often brought challenges in dating relationships. And so in a few cases, this would leave folks with the option of going to date back home. And I've seen folks who travel home to come and date. Now, that is another big topic that I think requires lots of discussion, and we will reserve that for the next video. Now, on the women's side, I'm also going to describe three scenarios. The first scenario that I want to clarify is that the Kenyan women in my circle that I know, at least in the US, are wildly successful and eligible. Whether you're talking business, academia, STEM, and all kinds of things. But however, the problem I observe is that the ratio between eligible men and eligible women somehow does not please the Lord. And so our women are often forced between the choice of forced singletude or engaging with what we call in science certified papists. And the term papist is a scientific term that is used to describe tall, dark, handsome men who have never been accused of selfishness with the things that the Lord gave them. So what does this mean? I honestly don't know. Like I said earlier, I am not an expert on this matter. I'm simply reporting things I've seen in my neighborhood, things I've observed that I hope may be useful to folks who are thinking about moving to diaspora, or folks who are really living in diaspora and navigating the same things. So if you are looking for a solution, I'm not the person to go to. However, I might mention two things. Number one, not everybody desires to get into a committed relationship. And so those who don't, do you. And those who do, I would say two things. Move. Feel free to change your circle, move to a different state, change churches, move. But whatever you do, move. And also, insert yourself in spaces where you're going to meet people that please the Lord. Thank you, guys.